All right. Well, it has been a long while since I've done any type of stream. So you'll have to excuse me as I get everything ready. Because, yeah, like I said, it's been a while. So, hello, everyone. I am Mike from Wandering Pilgrim Games. Let me get this little tab out of here. Put it up to here. Give me a second. Cool. So, I am Mike from Wandering Pilgrim Games. You might be asking yourself, what is Wandering Pilgrim Games? Because, maybe you haven't heard of us yet, which is fine. So, Wandering Pilgrim Games is a independent TTRPG development company that I created that I have, in the past few years, I've been making content for a various numbers of games. I've been doing D&D 5th edition. I've done a little bit of Mutants and Masterminds. I've done some City of Mist. I even created my own honey heist hack called Guts and Glory, which you can find on my itch page, which I just realized now I should probably make a command for my itch page. So if you'll give me a second, if you're watching this live, apologies. If you're watching it on YouTube, which I will most likely put on YouTube, just scroll ahead a little bit. Give me a second, because that should probably be a good thing I have. Because also on my itch page, besides just the specific words honey heist hack, I also have the Steel Horizons Quickstart guide, which I'll talk about that in just a little bit. Give me just a quick second. Thank God I have multiple monitors, because that makes this so much easier. Oh, hey, Rainy, what's up? For more goodies. And then go to my itch page. The worst part is I literally spent a good amount of time actually, like, figuring all this stuff out and being like, oh yeah, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. But no, I'm just dumb. There we go. Copy that, get rid of that, and then paste that, and then submit. Cool. Okay, cool. So, booyah. As I said, fuck it, we're doing live. Rainy and Crow, thank you for showing up. I appreciate both of you very much. And yes, that is very much my whole aesthetic. Just, I have a plan. Yeah, fuck it. I'm just going to do it live. Because that is just how I live my life. Okay, cool. That's good. That's good. Enjoy my lo-fi hip-hop radio beats to relax / study to. Because this is the only thing that gets me to focus. Because I have ADHD. So, I wish I had multiple monitors. Someday, you'll get there. So, yeah, let's get into, as I stretch, let's get into exactly what we're doing right now. So, actually, let me just pull this up for y'all live on screen so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, in our chat, if you do exclamation point itch, like, I'm itchy, same kind of itch, it'll bring you to the games page for Wandering Pilgrim Games, where you'll find the Guts and Glory hack, but you'll also find this, the Steel Horizons Quick Start Guide, where Steel Horizons is a Dieselpunk TTRPG setting that is made using the Hydra system, which the Hydra system is my own personal, fully fleshed out role-playing game system. So for instance, like when you think of like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, Starfinder, stuff like that, that uses the D20 system. The Hydra system is my own way of designing a full system. So it's not even just one particular type of game. And we'll get into that a little bit later, because I feel like I haven't really given a good explanation, at least on stream or on video, of exactly what the Hydra system is. But basically, if you imagine like how, you have the D20 system, where you have the 20-sided die, your D10s, your D12s, whatever, and then multiple games use that, or better example, Powered by the Apocalypse is a system, and then like Masks is a game using that. Blaze in the Dark is a game using that. So the aim of the Hydra system is to be what Powered by the Apocalypse is, and then from there you create multiple different games. So, funny story, the reason why it's called the Hydra system is because as of right now, I have 3 settings in my head ready to make for this system. So right now I'm working on Steel Horizons, which is the first one. So Steel Horizons, as you see on screen, is a diesel punk game. And when I say diesel punk, if you imagine steampunk as very like, form over function, everything's very fancy, everything's very angular. It's like, not angular. What's the word I'm thinking of? It's not angular. Like everything's very smooth and everything's very like intricate. That's the word, intricate. Diesel punk is the exact opposite. Diesel punk is like, here are hard angular lines and we're just gonna fuck shit up. So basically steampunk is like Victorian England, and then diesel punk is like the aesthetics and vibes of like between World War I and World War II, like industrial revolution, like very heavy industry, as given by this picture where there are mech suits, which I'm getting to those rules very soon. But if you choose to buy the Steel Horizons Quickstart guide, what you get is you get I believe it's 13 or 14 pages of basically character creation and player resources. So I have a whole bunch of archetypes and backgrounds, which is what you would use to create a character. In this particular quick start guide, there are 4 backgrounds given and 4 archetypes, 3 backgrounds. And then from those, you can create any number of combinations. Obviously, when the full rule set drops, when the full player guide drops for the Hydra system, you'll have much more options. But just for now, I figured it'd be easier just to give a little bit, not to give stuff. Yes, thank you, Crow. So elegance, steam, and brass versus chonk, steel, and guns. Yes, that is the biggest difference between the two. Actually, you know what I should do? Because if I'm just doing, hold on, let me pull this over here. If I'm working on stuff, I have this whole area. So why don't I add the text box? You're gonna have to give me a second. It's been a long time since I've streamed, so a lot of this stuff I need to remember how to use everything. Is it alert box? I think it's alert box. Nope, that's not it. Replay, credit to your account. Chat box, there it is, chat box. Add source. Done. So we'll put this here, right over, there we go, beautiful. Boop. Yeah, I have to do the same thing, Rainy. I need to fix that up soon. Unfortunately, I am still using slobs right now, just because I need to get everything taken. I need to port all this stuff over to OBS. Because yeah, we all know why slobs is terrible. But basically, yes, this is Steel Horizon Place. Quick start, guys. I was saying. So the Hydra system, in a nutshell, for those who may not know, is a D12 system where you use only D12 dice, which is because I love the D12. I think it's a very underappreciated dice. I grab my little dice bag out over here because I want to talk about it. I want to talk about my son. This is my son. This is my son, the D12. Okay, so oh, it does. Oh, sweet. Thank you, Crow. I did not realize that. So yes, I will take care of that. I will take care of that after this stream, actually, and then I'll have everything off of slobs onto OBS. But yeah. So the way the system works is you have a set number of D12s that you build a dice pool with. Actually, you know what? Why don't we do this? Because I'm just gonna flat out show off the quick start guide, because I think that'd be more fun. And also, it's like you're probably thinking, Mike, don't do that. Then people won't buy it. If you're gonna buy it, you're gonna buy it. Okay? Like I'd rather you know what you're getting, versus like buy something and be like, oh, I don't like this. If that makes sense. Steel Horizons pages. Okay, cool. So let's go through this bit by bit. I called the D12 a soccer ball. Dude, D12s are the best. They're so underappreciated. And I think it's also because when I first started playing D&D, I only played barbarians, which they're basically the only class that ever uses a D12. And I fell in love with them. I think it's a very underappreciated dice. But let's go through this. So we have our, because then people will get to see if there's something they want to buy. Yeah, so Crow, that's exactly what I'm talking about. By basically showing it up front, and it's more people like, that does look cool. I will get that and go through it on my own time. But we have this beautiful art by Bruno Rajek, Bruno_Rojo on Twitter. Let me actually put his name in chat because he is a incredible artist. I use him all the time. Okay. Also, the title right here, this whole logo, was designed by Matthew Bartlett, who is also incredibly talented. Which I'll put his thing. His is Art of Bartlett on Twitter. If you have a chance, commission both of them. They are both incredible. But so we have Steel Horizons, a Powered by Hydra setting. So obviously, we have our table of contents, which is nice. Also, before I forget, we have art by Eri, who is Hellatron Drawings on Twitter. Put them in there as well. They are also a very is Hellatron right? Drawing. Hold on, sorry. I want to make sure I want to get their handle right because they are an incredibly talented artist as well. Hellatron Drawing with no G. There it is. So, yes, so those are the three people I had work on this with me as well for layout and art and everything. And again, perfect. So, to begin, we have our introduction, which all of this stuff, this is always the first section in any Hydra product. It talks about representation in the Hydra system and safety rules. Safety rules meaning mostly lines and veils, X, N, and O cards. Just a quick run through for those who may not be familiar. Safety rules is more or less something you would do in a session 0 to make sure that somebody at your table is basically never in a situation where they feel uncomfortable or they want to basically leave the table. Because the point of the Hydra system, as with many other systems, is to get people at the table to play with you and to have fun. So X cards, N cards, and O cards. Basically, an O card, let's start from top to bottom. O card is basically like, I'm good, I'm having fun, let's keep playing. N card is like, this is a little iffy, I'm okay with this right now, but like it has the potential to get worse. And an X card is like, nah, we're done. Like, do the TikTok audio of like, you know what I'm talking about. It's like you're done. That's basically the X card. So to give you better examples from my own personal things, clicky Twitter links in the quick guide for those. Yes. The Twitter. I just realized I have to add Matt's info to the Quickstart guide. I did not put his in there by accident, but I need to add the link to his Twitter as well because he worked on the logo. But going back to what I was saying, the X guard and lines and veils. A line is basically like, this is my line in the sand. This topic will never be discussed. I don't want it involved. I want it nowhere near my games. So, for instance, using myself as an example, I was a teacher for a long time. A line for me is I don't do well with violence against children at all. So that is something that if I'm running a game or if I'm in a game, it's never going to show up because that's for me. That's my personal line. And then veils is something like, you brush it over quickly. Or like you can talk about it, but like maybe just fade to black. So for a lot of people, that's something like, sex in game. Like nobody wants to have you roll for a sexual encounter, although maybe some people do, and that's fine as long as everyone's on the same page. But some people that might be a veil. You roll for the seduction, all that stuff, and it's like, okay, and we fade to black, knowing what's happening. That's the difference between a line and a veil. So this stuff here, this is always, 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 always included. Because to me, before the game even starts, this needs to be taken care of. Because the cornerstone of the Hydra system is that everyone has fun, everyone's comfortable, everybody has a good time. Okay, now we get into how to play. So, as I was saying, the way this works is you construct a pool of d12s. And the way you figure out those d12s is based on your ranks in different attributes and skills and things like that. So, looking at this section here, the way it works is when you make your, before we get into like how to make a die pool, we're going to talk about how the die pool works, which is basically you have a number of d12s equal to the number of ranks in whatever archetype that you are using to do a check. You roll all of them and you take the highest number of whatever they are. And there are 3 possible results. There are failures with a consequence, which is like a 1 through 4. So it's like you messed up. You really messed up. 5 through 9 is a success with a consequence, meaning like you did it, but like maybe something kind of went wrong. And then 10, 11, and 12 is succeed, no consequences, like you crushed it. You got this shit done. And basically the way this would work, so the example I gave here is you have a character who rolls, they have 3 ranks in the mind attribute. So they roll 3 d12s, and they have a 3, 8, and a 10. Take the highest number. 10 is a success with no consequence. Boom, they're good. And one thing I've always included is I always love to include in-game examples. So for instance, like this little box down here, that will show you more examples. Also, let me move myself out of the way for a second, just so you guys can all see everything. Yeah, but anything that comes up here in these boxes, that's in-game examples. So the big thing, the attributes. There are 5 attributes in the Hydra system. There is brawn, pretty self-explanatory, you know, your physical strength. So for instance, in combat, that would be like a heavy punch, breaking through enemy's armor. Out of combat would be like smashing a wall, carrying something very heavy. Let me turn down the lo-fi just a bit. Also, Crow and Rainy, how are the audio levels for you guys? Because I know sometimes there's a weird disconnect where like I think it's fine, but then like on stream either it's too low or too high. So just let me know. Let me know how it's coming all up. So next one's Finesse. Finesse is like being more dexterous and quicker. So in combat would be running between cover, dodging attacks. Out of combat would be staying hidden or like being able to like very acrobatically climb up a wall. Resolve. So resolve is something that I came up with that I personally, resolve is my favorite attribute, to be completely honest, because I feel like in a lot of games, sounds good? Awesome. So for instance, let's use D&D as an example. I'm gonna use D&D as a lot of examples, and by no means am I trying to say like, you know, I'm better than D&D, but like, hey, I'd like you to think that. It's just something I'm more familiar with, and something a lot of people are also familiar with. So in D&D, you have Constitution, which is a stat that, me personally, I think it's not underused a lot. So in my game, you have Resolve, where in combat, that would be like, you know, throwing yourself into the front line, or like basically being a tank. And then also, out of combat, which the important thing here is, not everything revolves around combat. So Resolve, out of combat, is not just like physical resolve, it could be mental resolve too. Like, you know, remaining steadfast in your belief, or like you'll never give up this task, whatever it is, because of your inner resolve. I want things to be not just, sometimes I feel like a lot of games, the attributes, the abilities, the skills are all very based towards combat only. And I want there to be combat. Obviously, I enjoy combat. I'm a very tactical player. But I want there to be a chance for people to use these abilities outside of combat without having to like jump through 10 hoops to figure out how. The next one is Mind. Basically, mind, you know, using your brain. In combat is like trying to find a weak spot in someone's armor, or like tactically outthinking an opponent. And then out of combat would be, you know, understanding something, or even like investigating a mystery, trying to find clues. And the last one, obviously, is Swagger. Swagger refers to like being very charismatic, being very talkative, being able to get people to kind of do what you want them to do. So in combat might even be like, not even like a physical thing. Like it might even just be like talking your way out of a problem, or like, you know, if you imagine you know, those action movies where somebody gets caught and instead of having a full-on knockout, drag-out fight, they talk their way out of it. That's Swagger. And obviously out of combat, which is the easier one, is like, you know, just convincing someone or trying to get yourself out of a problem. So, if you'll excuse me as I talk super fast because of my ADHD, which is so great. Let me take a quick drink to wet my whistle, and then we can talk about consequences. So, as I mentioned before, over here with the die results, 1 through 4, basically 1 through 9 is either a failure or success with a consequence. So you may be wondering, what is a consequence? Now, a consequence, summed up, is something that I took from the Fantasy Flight games, where in Fantasy Flight Star Wars games, you roll a number of dice and construct your dice pool, and basically there are 4 different ways you can succeed or fail in a dice check. So there's you can completely fail, like failure with threats, as it's called in their game, or failure with advantages, and then succeed with threats, succeed with advantages. So there's multiple different scales. And the way this works for me in my game is that you may succeed, but like there's always that thing that goes wrong. Like for instance, if you imagine a spy movie, right? Like you're trying to grab Mission Impossible. All right. So Ethan Hawke comes all the way down from the roof. He's doing the little thing on the computer. He's hanging up because something can't touch the floor because that's pressure sensors, right? So it's like, okay, Ethan tells his lore keeper, which is the name of game runners in my system. He tells the lore keeper, okay, I want to try to hack this computer. So the lore keeper says, yeah, go ahead, roll a check. So he rolls it. He gets a 7. So the lore keeper says, cool, you've hacked the computer, you have the data, but a little bead of sweat falls off your cheek and hits the floor, setting off the alarm. That is an example of a consequence. So that's also an example of a non-combat consequence. So really the fun thing about this too is while in many games, the DM, the GM, the game runner is the person who comes up with what that consequence is. In these situations, I want the lore keeper and the player to be able to brainstorm exactly what they'd want that consequence to be. So, going back to Fantasy Flight Star Wars games, my absolute love. I have a whole shelf right here on my desk full of those books. My favorite thing to do is if I roll a check, like if I'm shooting at a stormtrooper and I succeed, but I have a threat. Something goes wrong. My favorite thing to do always is to say things like, "Oh, the shot goes wide and it hits the door lock and it opens the door and reinforcements come pouring in." Like it's to me, it's fun. Like it's fun for me to have what I want happen, but also be able to throw a little monkey wrench in to make the story more fun. Because everyone wants to be the hero, everyone wants to be the winner. But deep down, to me, everybody wants that moment of like, the odds are stacked against you. How are you going to get out of this one? And then you get out of it. And it feels great. So to me, that's what consequences are. So, using the example I've given in this game, we have this guy, Steve. So Steve has a Bruiser. They're making a roll to break through a wall on an abandoned building. They have 2 ranks in brawn. So they roll 2d12s. They have 2 and an 8. So 8, success, boom. You got it. You punch through the wall. Steve, your Bruiser's in. But however, there's a consequence. So in this situation, the lore keeper says, okay, Steve, you punch through the wall, you're in. But part of the wall collapses behind you. So your party's going to have a little bit more trouble getting through. Which is fun because instead of the instances where, oh, I picked the lock, you picked it, everyone's in. Which is fun. You can do that. No problem with that. But in this instance, now, Steve, you're in, you're cut off. Your other party has to get through this rubble. So, for instance, now the person behind you can say, all right, rubble's falling. I'm going to sneak. I'm very dexterous. I have a lot of finesse. I'm going to dodge my way through the debris so I don't get hit. Cool. Roll a finesse check. The next person says, I'm going to pull the debris out of the way and get my way through. Awesome. Brawn. And the last person says, I don't care how much debris hits me. I'm just walking straight through. I am going to take all these hits. Boom. Resolve. So that way now you have 3 players, actually 4, including Steve. You have 4 players who have done the same situation, but in multiple different ways. Which leads us to approaches. So approaches are my favorite part because, again, I'm using D&D as an example only because it is something that I'm more familiar with. A lot of times in D&D, every situation has a very specific skill or attribute that has to be used. So if you're talking to someone, if you're trying to, okay, let's use intimidation. You're trying to be intimidating, you're trying to be tough. You can only roll charisma. Doesn't matter what your charisma score is. Doesn't matter that it doesn't matter that you're a barbarian with 25 strength. You roll charisma. You roll your 9 charisma, which kind of sucks sometimes. That was the problem I ran into a lot, where I have this huge hulking barbarian who's able to cleave multiple people in half in a single turn, but I can't intimidate someone because my charisma stat was too low. So, for me, my way of getting around that, which also, this is art by Airy Helitron Drawings, which is very cool. This is actually a Bruiser. Notice the metallic arm. I thought it was pretty cool. But for me, I want people to be able to say, instead of saying, okay, this is the role I'm making, I'll figure out how I justify this role. No. You tell me, you tell the lore keeper, this is how I want to approach this situation. And then they say, cool, here's the attribute that would correspond with that. Which I personally think any good DM or any good game master or game runner would be able to do that with multiple systems. I'm not saying that I'm like patenting this idea. And I've seen it in D&D, I've seen it in plenty of games where you can do that. But in this game, in this situation, I want people to be able to use, as long as they can justify it, they can use any of the 5 attributes. So, again, using this example, we have 2 people. We have Mike, we have Ryan. Also, pretty much every example is named after somebody I know in real life. So Mike has a Pathfinder, Ryan has a Slinger. A Pathfinder is like more or less a scout, somebody who's very nimble and dexterous. A Slinger is somebody who basically they have a core, like a little container of pure energy that they're able to use that energy to kind of deal devastating attacks. In this particular diesel punk setting, it's the closest thing to magic, quote unquote. But the situation is there are armored soldiers that are blocking their way in from getting to town. So both the soldiers are like, listen, if you want to come into town, you gotta, like, why are you here? What's the deal? So we have 2 possible situations. So Mike's Pathfinder says, listen, I'm a pretty smart guy. All right, I've been around the world. But I don't want to tell them why we're here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double talk them. I'm going to out talk them. So he rolls a mind check. Okay. He has 2 ranks. Oh, sorry. I misspoke. He's not a very smart guy, but he's very dexterous. He's very quick. And also for me personally, Finesse is not just quick physically. He's quick-witted, which is where that comes in. So he decides to use Finesse because he's so quick-witted that he's going to out-talk the soldiers. He's going to basically, like, if you imagine like the duck season, rabbit season thing, like he's doing that to the guards. So he has 2 ranks, rolls a d12, gets a 4 and 11. Boom, 11. Success, no consequences. So basically the party makes it past these guards because Mike's Pathfinder duck season, rabbit season these guards, right? Like he basically made them think that it was their idea the entire time. Okay? In a different game, we have Ryan Slinger, who instead, he's the one who's very intelligent, very logical. So he says, I'm going to use logic to solve this problem, right? So he uses his ranks in mind, which he has 3. Rolls a 2, 8, and 9. So with the 9, he manages to get through. He says, listen, our benefactor's expecting us. Every moment we're not there, it's because you're delaying us. So we will tell our benefactor it's because of you. So with this, with his successful roll, the guard's like, oh God, like, I don't know who this guy is, but sure. But obviously, as we remember, 9 is a success with a consequence. So a potential consequence of this is maybe the guard's like, okay, cool. Take us to your benefactor. We'll explain the situation ourselves, which may throw a monkey wrench in things. But that's an example of just a way that 2 different parties can deal with the same situation in 2 drastically different ways. And that's something I always want to do. I want people to look at a problem and say, this is how I would figure this out and be able to do it, as opposed to, oh, you have to get past the guards. I have to roll persuasion. My persuasion's -2. I can't do anything. I guess I'll sit this one out. Because that sucks. That does suck sometimes. But at least with this way, everyone can feel like they can always add to it. So, now we've explained the rules. We've given a brief explanation of how attributes, consequences, and dice rolling works. Let's make a character. So, the way you start is all of your 5 attributes start at rank 1. No matter what, you always have at least 1 rank, because going along with that heroic fantasy, you want to be a hero. You want to be big damn heroes, to quote Firefly, my favorite show. You want to be cool. You want to do those cinematic moments, right? So everyone is at least a little bit good at everything to start. So, the only I almost said legislation. Why did I almost say legislation? The only rule about that is that during character creation, none of your attributes can ever be above 3 ranks. So you can't like throw a bunch of ranks into one skill and use that for everything. You can do that later. You can like upgrade your things later, but at least for character creation, you cap out at 3 ranks. So to begin, you choose your background, then you choose your archetype, and then you make a signature weapon. So you may notice here it says choose background, choose archetype with 3 accompanying tags. We'll talk about the tags in just a second, because that's actually something I'm working on with the Lore Keeper guide, and I'll actually jump over and show you a little preview of what that looks like. So with the Quickstart guide, I've included 3 backgrounds. There are many more that I already have written. I think I have 8 or 9 already written, but I just chose to put 3 in, not to overwhelm people. So, with a background and with an archetype, you are given a number of wounds that you start with, basically equal to your health. You're given a luck value, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then you are given a +1 to 1 of 2 attributes. So we have a Brawler. Brawler is exactly what it sounds like. Someone very good with their fists, up front, able to like just use their pure strength and force to get through life. We have the Entertainer. Someone very charismatic, a silver-tongued rogue, basically. And then we have the Inventor. Someone very very logical, very smart. Someone able to deal with technology in the world. So you'll notice for each one, so for instance, Brawler, you get 5 wounds, 1 luck, and you can add 1 to Brawn or Resolve. Entertainer, +2 wounds, +4 luck, +1 swagger, +1 finesse. And then Inventor, +3 wounds, +3 luck, +1 mind, or +1 resolve. So for the more astute of you, you may notice there's a little pattern there with the wounds and luck. And to that I say, you are correct, and good eye. So when you create a background, or create an archetype, when you decide the values of wounds and values of luck, they have an inverse relationship. And to prove that, actually, hold on, before I prove that, let's go over the archetypes, because this applies to both. And then I'll jump over to the Lore Keeper guide, and I'll show you. So archetypes are essentially what is... So if backgrounds are what you were, where you came from, archetypes is what you are now. So again, I think there's 9 archetypes I've had made up already. I guess 10 if you include the one I put in the Lore Keeper Codex as an example. But only 4 are here. So Bruiser, again, very simple. Like imagine just a pugilist, somebody who fights with their fists, or well known with their martial artist. Pathfinder, stealthy trackers, guides, scouts, things like that. Sawbones. Sawbones are actually probably one of my favorite archetypes, because I came up with the idea for Sawbones after watching Star Trek, because I imagine Bones from Star Trek is the patron saint of Sawbones. They are a incredibly talented doctor, healer, but they're terrible with people. Like if you imagine someone who like a Sawbones is somebody who views a person like a car, like a mechanic would view a car. Like I don't care what you're talking about. I know how to fix you. Let me fix you. That's Sawbones. And then a Slinger basically calls on the power of the magic of the world, where in Steel Horizons it's something called Pyric Energy, but we don't need to talk about that right now. I kept the Quickstart guide a little light on lore, just to not overwhelm people. I can add that in later. But basically, a Slinger calls upon the power of the land itself and uses it as sort of like a magic. But as you can see, again, +4 wounds, +2 luck. Now with Archetypes, as opposed to a +1 to 1 of 2 skills, it's a +2 to 1 of 2 skills. Sawbones is the most in-flavor term for a doctor possible in this setting. Exactly. That's why I chose it, actually. Because I remember I didn't want to say doctor, because I felt like doctor was very played out. So I went to my handy dandy thesaurus, put in doctor, and I saw Sawbones. I'm like, that's perfect. Like, Sawbones is the exact tone that I'm going for with this. Because someone, like, literally, who's just like, it's like, doctor, my leg. It's like, all right, I'm just cut it off. Like, all right, cool, I fixed it. But as you can see, they're very similar, where each of them has a wounds total and a luck total, and then backgrounds you add 1 to 1 of 2 attributes, and archetypes you add 2 to 1 of 2 attributes. So let's talk about the relationship between wounds and luck. So we're going to jump over to the Lore Keeper Codex. This is a work in progress. So let's look at creating an archetype or creating a background. So let's talk about what it's like to actually create a background, since we've seen a couple of them and see exactly how they work. Let's move myself back over here. So with every part of the Hydra system, I like to give you, the potential lore keeper, questions. And that these questions basically help inform you about what you want this specific background, archetype, maneuver, tag, what you want them to do. So, would you like a shotgun instead of a leg? Because shotguns got kicked. I hate you guys. So with a background, the 2 main questions are, how did this background shape you into who you are? And then what skills, lessons, or experiences did you gain from this background? You have no sword power here. So basically with these 2 questions, that's going to inform you about how this background is built. Basically, what makes this background do what it wants to do. So the next thing is your wounds and luck. So obviously, you'll notice that if you gave yourself +5 wounds, you'd only get +1 luck, and all the way down. So to +1 wounds, +5 luck. Basically, what this shows, which I'll talk about luck in just a second, is actually, I'm sorry, I'm doing that thing again where I jump around a lot. So if this is confusing, please let me know, and I apologize that I keep jumping back and forth, but it's like my ADHD scatterbrain. I'm always like, oh, I want to explain this. Wait, I have to explain that first. Wait, I have to do this first. So let's just talk about luck for a quick second. Luck. So basically, when you choose your character, they have a specific luck value. The way luck comes into play is that whenever your wounds are reduced to 0, you check off a box of luck and then go back to full wounds. What this basically entails is, instead of like in many games where like when you hit 0, you're unconscious, this is a narrative cinematic game. When you hit 0 wounds, you check off one of your luck boxes and like you're avoiding death basically. And if at any time you ever hit 0 and you've checked off your luck and you have no more boxes to check off, then your character is dead. And then obviously with every box of luck checked off, you can choose to add an additional d6 to your highest roll. The problem is that you then immediately take a wound. So for instance, if you'll notice, if we go back to the Lore Keeper Guide, the way this works in game is the more wounds you have, it will be very hard to bring you to 0. But when you do, you don't have a lot of luck to bring you back up. But on the flip side, maybe you don't have a lot of wounds, but you have much more luck. And the way, in my mind, the way that correlates is if you imagine a bruiser. So let's make a bruiser real quick. We go back to this, right? So if we made a brawler bruiser, that means they have 9 wounds, right? And 3 luck. So they take all their 9 wounds, check off the luck box, go back to 9. Take all the 9 wounds, check it off, go back to 9. Take it all the 9 wounds, check it, dead, right? What that shows basically is they're very tanky. They're very hard to kill, right? They're very hard to get to 0 wounds. But when they do, they have less luck to get them back up again. Yeah, no problem, Crow. I'll see you in a second. On the flip side, let's look at an entertainer pathfinder, right? So a pathfinder who maybe they're a scout, but they... How about this? Actually, this is a better idea. An entertainer pathfinder. What would they look like, right? Maybe it's someone who's a spy, but they are part of a circus. Or they're a roving entertainer that they ingratiate themselves into... Or sorry, ingratiate? Yeah. Ingratiate themselves into audiences, learn all the secrets, and leave. With that case, they'd only have 4 wounds, but they'd have 8 luck. Which means it's going to be very easy to get them down to 0 because they're very squishy. But they keep coming back up because they're so lucky, right? So, I mean, if you look at this example, 9 wounds, 3 luck, which means they can go through 9 wounds 3 times. So what's that? 27. And an entertainer has 4 wounds. They can go through 8 times. So 4, 32, right? So the thing is, it may sound like the entertainer or the entertainer pathfinder has more wounds, which is true mechanically. But the thing is, they have more luck to pull from. So whenever they miss a roll, they'll be more willing to spend those luck die and then take extra wounds. So if you think about it this way, the tankier guys, the ones who have more wounds but less luck, they may not always be using those luck die, so they'll have more wounds in the long run, if that makes sense. Whereas somebody who, like, I've only got 4 wounds, but I've got 8 luck, so it's like, man, I've got 1 wound left. I need to make this attack. I miss it. You know what? I will add a luck point, because even though I'm going to take that 1 wound to go to 0, I've got 6 boxes of luck left. I got plenty of time. Whereas with the other guys, it's like, I don't have a lot of luck. Like, once I hit 0, it's done. And that's the kind of way I want to design these, basically, that it shows with the way you design these, or the way you create your character, that the more luck you have, you feel like you have more chances to try to do things more adventurous. Which you can as a low luck character. That's up to you. So that brings us to this, which is basically what I was explaining, that, you know, the more wounds you have, the less luck. And to me, at least, that kind of shows off the idea that you are tanky, you can take a lot of hits, you'll be fine. But if they get past your defenses, if they get past all those wounds, you've got maybe 1 or 2 points of luck. And that's not a lot. So, that's just me. So, expeditions. Expeditions basically is my word for, like, what a session would be like. So here's just a couple examples of what a session could look like in game. Basically, what your lore keeper could send the party on. Because basically, within Steel Horizons, your character is a wanderer. More or less a character like a roving mercenary looking for work. And these are just a couple possible examples of things that those characters could do on those sessions, whether it only takes 1 session or multiple sessions. And then down here we have stamina. Stamina is something where every single expedition, so basically mechanically every single session, each character starts with 3 stamina. They can go up from there, they can go down from there. They always start with 3. You're probably wondering, what do you use stamina for? That's a great question, which we'll get to in just a second. Because the next part of character creation, after you've chosen your background, your archetype, right? We've chosen our background, we've chosen our archetype. We go to tags. So we have our signature weapon, and we have the background archetype tags. So the way this works, again, making sure everyone's on the same page, we've chosen our background, we've chosen our archetype, and each of them gets 3 tags. Probably wondering, what do you mean by tags? So the way a tag works is you and your lore keeper, or just you determine from your background and from your archetype, well, what does this background archetype give me? Right? Like, what kind of person am I? And this is also a way to basically set aside or set apart two potentially same characters. So let's give an example. So we have Katie. Katie is a brawler, right? So she knows that she has three tags from her background, 3 tags from her archetype. So her archetype is a brawler, bruiser. So she imagines, you know what? I'm going to give myself the tag pit fighter. Because my brawler, my bruiser, they made their way fighting in underground fighting pits. Which is great. Perfect. It gives a little bit of backstory, and it gives something for one of those tags. So now with the way that tag works is she rolls her dice. She has a 2, 5, and a 7, meaning that with the 7 as the highest one, she would succeed, but she has a consequence, right? She's not really into dealing with consequences. So she says, listen, lore keeper, this is a check about fighting. I'm a pit fighter, right? I'm used to fighting. I should be good at this. So lore keeper says, yeah, that's perfect. That tag works perfectly here. So she takes her lowest roll and re-rolls it. She takes that 2, rolls it becomes a 12. So now, instead of succeeding with a consequence, she fully succeeds. So basically, with your lore keeper, for every background and every archetype, you guys come up with 3 tags that represent that character. So if we go back, we'll say we'll make a entertainer Sawbone, entertainer Pathfinder, right? So the entertainer, what are some tags we could use for an entertainer background, right? What did that background help you do? Okay, so with an entertainer, you could say, Silver Tongue. Okay, and that tag represents that you're very good with words. You're able to talk your way out of any problem, right? Or another possible tag could be friends in low places, right? So as an entertainer, you've dealt with people from all over. So let's say your party's talking to a criminal element and you are making a swagger check and didn't go well. You can say, listen, I have my friends in low places tag. I'm good at talking to people in the criminal underworld. I should be good at this. I can re-roll something. That works, right? So we have Silver Tongue, friends in low places. And you can be creative with it, right? You can do something like, I think it's been funny, be the tag that's make a tag that says I didn't do it, right? So the way you could use that possible tag is, if you're trying to talk your way out of something, if you're almost getting in trouble, okay, you make your check to get out of it, doesn't do well. I didn't do it. You use your I didn't do it tag, which shows your character being able to kind of talk their way out of some problems. And I think personally that's a way that 2 people could make the same background, same archetype, and have 2 wildly different characters. And that's what I like. I don't want people to say, okay, I'm a brawler bruiser, so I have to play a very specific way. No, not at all. Those tags are a way to make your character your own. And then moving on from tags, we go to weapons and then weapon tags. So the last part of the process, after you've made your background, you have your 3 tags. Make your archetype, you have those 3 tags. You have 6 altogether. You create your signature weapon. So like in many other games, like for instance D&D, every class starts with a weapon. Same thing happens here in the Hydra system, right? So in this chart, there's a table you can roll for, just in case you can't think of something. So you come up with a weapon, and then you have a weapon, and the weapon deals anywhere from 1 to 3 wounds, right? And then given how many wounds this weapon deals, you can then add a number of tags. So, for instance, we have knife, pistol, longsword, carbine, sniper rifle, greatsword. In this example, knife and pistol deal 1, longsword or carbine deal 2, and then sniper rifle and greatsword deal 3. Now, when you make a weapon, you automatically make whatever its range is, which I'm going to jump to the lore keeper guide because this explains it a little bit better. So where is it? Where'd it go? Sorry, give me a second. Here we go. So, when you create a weapon, the first tag you take automatically is the range, which can be engaged, meaning melee, mid, which is just out of melee range. So for me, I always say it's anywhere from 6 to 30 feet, and then long is 30 feet or more. So in this game, there are like range bands. There's not like specific measurements like in D&D or Pathfinder, where it's like, this is a 40-foot spell. No, it's more just narrative. It's more range bands versus concrete things. So every weapon gets that. Is it an engaged weapon, a mid weapon, or a long weapon? From there, depending on how many wounds it deals, you gain additional tags. So, for instance, going back to this, any weapon that deals only one wound automatically gets one additional tag. A weapon that deals 2 wounds, you roll 1d12. On a 9 or above, you gain a tag. If you deal 3 wounds, only on a roll of 12 do you gain 1 additional tag. The reason for this basically is, sure, this weapon only deals 1 wound. It's not as powerful, but those tags can make it more powerful. So for instance, if you look at this little list, this preliminary list of tags, we have something like bleed. So for bleed, if you are a player that uses bleed means that the target that they are fighting drops an additional stamina when it's defeated, which we talked about before. Stamina can go up or down. If a danger has bleed and inflicts bleed upon a player, that player subtracts 1 from the next roll. So you can tell that, yes, it's only 1 wound, but these tags add different status conditions, right? And the thing is that for 3 wounds can be a lot. Like, especially the example we just gave of that Entertainer Pathfinder, they've only got 4 wounds. Yeah, they've got 8 luck, but only 4 wounds. So 1 3-wound weapon can almost kill them. So maybe that wouldn't have a lot of additional tags like a 1-wound weapon was. Just a sort of way to balance it out. But as you can see, these are just a couple examples of a few tags I've come up with as like baseline tags. Also, luckily, in the Lore Keeper Codex, just like with backgrounds, archetypes, and tags, there are suggestions and rules and guidelines of how to create your own. So don't look at this list and say, wow, that's it? That's all there is? Well, yeah, that's all there is for now, but you can always make your own. And I personally will be creating more as time goes on. Different expansions, different DLC. I'm kidding, it's not DLC. No, not my secrets. Yeah. But these are a couple just example ones that are in the Quickstart guide for players. If you notice, these ones are all specifically designed for players that are using it. A lot of times, if a danger is using a tag, the tag may not act the same way, which is fine. It's just the way things work. And then finally, we get to maneuvers, which is what you spend your stamina on. Yes, as you said, Rainy, this is the Quickstart guide. So you're not going to get all the rules right away. It's more or less, which actually, I don't know if Crow's back or not. I stole this idea from Crow, where I wanted to get something out there. Basically something to say hey, I'm making my own game. I'm working on something. And they say, well, what is it? Instead of me saying, well, it's not out yet. I'm still working on it. Now I can say, listen, it's not fully done, but here's a preview, here's a sample. So they can look at it, and as Rainey says, they want that next little nibble, right? They're like, that's good. I want more. Boom. That's what this is for. So, an archetype has maneuvers. And these maneuvers, to me, are the most fun part. The maneuvers, in my eyes, are those cool, cinematic, heroic moves that you can do. So, and maneuvers, based upon their intensity, for lack of a better word, can cost anywhere from 1 to 3 stamina. So remember, you only start with 3 stamina. There are ways to gain stamina through the session. So you're not it's not 3 and that's it. There's ways to gain some. But you have to realize, listen, I can use this 1 stamina maneuver and deal a little bit of damage. Or I can do this 3 stamina maneuver and like really rain down hell. But what am I going to do? That's the choice you have to make. So in the quick start guide, each of these maneuvers, these are all 1-point maneuvers. I didn't want to overwhelm you with the 1s, the 2s, and the 3s. These are all 1s. So each archetype gets 3 maneuvers. And by spending 1 stamina on your turn as your action, you can do these maneuvers. So for instance, let's look at the Bruiser, right? So the Bruiser has Flurry, which means that you immediately deal 2 wounds to all enemies near you, meaning within your range. So Bruisers have a lot of engaged weapons, so anybody who's engaged with you immediately takes 2 wounds, all of them, instantly. You have Hunker Down, which means the next 2 wounds you take, you ignore them. So if someone shoots at you with God forbid, a 5-wound weapon, it's only 3. You reduced it by 2. And the last one is Gut Shot, where basically, as a Bruiser, me personally, I'm imagining is like you just punch them right in the gut and they double over. So you instantly deal 2 wounds to one person, and then when that target is defeated or killed, they drop a stamina, and you gain a stamina back once they are defeated. And that's just an example of a couple 1-point maneuvers. If we jump over to here, when we talk about maneuvers. So, these are something I added to the Lore Keeper Codex to give it a better, a more visual flair. So, I personally use the idea of Thor and Goku in my brain about how these maneuvers would look. So, for instance, for Thor, a 1-point maneuver would be when he throws his hammer, right? He throws the hammer, it hits a guy, pins him against the wall. Thor's 2-point maneuver would be when he calls down a lightning bolt, right? So lightning bolt deals the wounds to a bunch of guys, and then they're all stunned, right? So I included what stun might look like. So stun is another tag I've invented just on the spot. And then his 3-point maneuver, his overcharge. His overcharge is more or less what he like. It's the end of Thor Ragnarok, right? He calls upon the power of lightning. He deals 3 wounds to everyone around him, and he makes a signature weapon attack on whoever's the closest. So his 3-point maneuver deals massive damage it's a massive AoE, and additionally, he deals another weapon attack. But obviously, he may be out of stamina, so he can't do anything else. So that's the way to kind of gauge how these different maneuvers might work. And then also, as I said before, in this Lore Keeper Codex, there are plenty of examples of how maneuvers would look, and also how you could create your own maneuvers. And then down here we have the Lore Keeper Codex, or Lore Keeper Relax. Wow, none of that was correct. Lore Keeper Resources. That's the one. Use that one. So, we have basically a little bit of background, and we have this little section called the Final Ruling, which is basically my way to tell Lore Keepers, listen, you're running the game. It is a collaborative effort between you and your players. But sometimes you may have to say, listen, this is the decision that I'm making. We will talk about this after the game, but just to continue the game and not bog us down, here's what we're going to do right now. And then after the game, we can rediscuss this if we want to change it later. Because I'm sure many of you guys out there watching know, how many games have you been in that, you spend 35 minutes arguing, does this person have cover? Do they not? Is it 3/4 cover? Is it full cover? This is the way, sort of like the permission to tell Lore Keepers, listen, do not steamroll your players by any means. Do not say, this is my rules, my game. Because it's not. It's everyone's game. But this is your way to say, listen, this is the decision I'm going to make right now. We are more than welcome to rediscuss this at the end of the game to make sure everyone is on the same page. And here, we have a couple different ways of how to create combatants. So within the Hydra system, there are low, moderate, high, and extreme dangers, which all correspond to different levels of possible combat encounters. So here, I've given you an example of a low danger example, which is a partisan, right? Fighting out in the wilderness, you have the partisans doing any number of things. And then a moderate danger, we have a Pyrrhic Razor Claw. which in Steel Horizons, a Razor Claw is a large jaguar-like creature that has been infected by pyric energy to become kind of mutated into this massive hulking creature. So you have examples of how to create a moderate danger, how to create a low danger, and examples of both. And then we get to the end, which says, stay tuned for more rules in the full Steel Horizons rule set coming soon. So as of right now, I am currently working on the Lore Keeper Codex, which is this document I keep going back to here. And the Lore Keeper Codex is more or less the guide to game run any game in the Hydra system. And then Steel Horizons specifically being just a setting of the Hydra system. That one will get its own book, its own player book. So more or less my plan going forward, as we kind of get back into the whole reason I started streaming, is as I work on this Lore Keeper Codex, which there are plenty of previews, both on the Wandering Pilgrim Twitter, which I will put that in chat, as well as on the Wandering Pilgrim Gilded server, which is, it's better than Discord. It's a lot better than Discord. But on that server, I share a lot of previews from all the materials I'm working on, including the Lore Keeper Codex, including rules for upcoming rules for mechs, which is coming. Trust me. I know a lot of people see this and assume it's a mech game, of which it will be. It will be soon. But for right now, I'm still working on those rules. But there will be a Lore Keeper Codex, which is the rules for how to run any Hydra game. And then each setting will get its own setting book. So there will be a full Steel Horizons book, which will have better player resources. It'll have examples of different dangers from Steel Horizons. It'll have custom weapons from Steel Horizons. It'll have even custom encounters that are not combat encounters, because the major thing I want to have is, again, as I've said before, I love combat. I grew up a tabletop mini war gamer. I adore combat. I love it so much. I love the tactical nature of it. But many people don't, and that's totally fine. Many people want a game where you can have combat, but not everything revolves around combat, which is what I want for Hydra system as well. I want it to be something where an encounter is not always, okay, here we go, we're going to fight this group of guys until we're dead or they're dead. No, it could be any number of things. It could be running into a traveler on the road and solving a mystery. It could be unraveling an assassination plot. All kinds of things. That's what I want from this game. I want it to be cinematic. I want it to be narrative. So from there, we have the Lore Keeper Codex. We're going to have the Steel Horizons player guide, or even Steel Horizons setting guide, which will have both player and Lore Keeper resources, as well as all future Hydra system settings, which I can talk about now, which I've mentioned a few times, I think, to people in the Gilded server, would be a game I call Into the Badlands. Or, sorry, I think just the Badlands, because Into the Badlands, I believe, was a TV show that was also very good. It was a good show. I didn't want to steal that name. But the Badlands is a supernatural Wild West game, which I also have stuff already created for that too. But for now, I'm focusing on just Steel Horizons, and then eventually I'll get to the Badlands, as well as other games as well. So I think for now, that's a pretty good summary of exactly what this whole system is. Actually, no, why don't we stop here then? I know I said before I was going to be working on this, but I feel like a better idea was just kind of giving you guys a preview of what the Quickstart guide looked like, which again, as a reminder, if you go to our itch page, that's where you can find your copy of this, which again, it's only $5. And for $5, you get either page view or spread view, the full character sheet, and the enhanced combat rules. Because I know, at least in the Quickstart guide, I didn't focus on combat that much because I wanted you to focus more on being able to create a character and see how the character works. But for $5, you also get that and the combat rules, which go into a little bit more detail of how combat works in the Hydra system. So, with that, we have our Quickstart guide. We talked a little bit about the Lore Keeper Codex. So, before I sign off for good, please, if this is at all interesting to you, please be sure, head on over to our itch page, wanderingpilgrimgames.itch.io/Steel Horizons Quickstart Guide, with dashes in there. Head on over, grab a copy, try it out, leave a review, please. Reviews are the lifeblood for indie developers like myself, and every review helps me make the product better. Also, if you want to get more behind the scenes looks, be sure to join our Guilded server, which in chat, I'll hit it one more time. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll have all those links down below. But be sure to join. And actually, as of right now, let me double check something, because I'm kind of running a little something right now where if right now on Twitter, if the Wandering Pilgrims account gets to 400 followers, which as of right now, it's 15 away. If it does that, I will be running a streamed mini campaign of Steel Horizons to show off how the game works kind of in person. And I'll post it, Twitch, YouTube, I'll post it all different places. But if we get 15 more followers by the end of the year, so it's currently November 24th, Thanksgiving is tomorrow, which happy almost Thanksgiving for my Americans out there. But if we get to 400 by the end of the year, I will personally run a mini campaign of Steel Horizons for a number of people from probably my Guilded server, which also, as of right now, if I can get 2 more people to join my Guilded server, I have a section of the server that is for subscribers and backers who have been getting a lot of behind the scenes stuff. If I get 2 more members, not subscribers, just members of the server, I will release a lot of that stuff for everyone to check out, to kind of, get everybody excited. So, with that, I think that's a great point to end at. And then eventually, now that I'm kind of getting my streaming setup back working, 2 more people, Rainy. That's all we need, just 2 more. So since I'm getting my streaming stuff back up, eventually I'll probably throw up another stream of me actually working on the Lore Keeper Codex. I do want to keep some of it a little close to the chest, just because I want to try to tantalize people. I don't know what that was. That was weird. I deeply apologize for whatever that was. But yeah. So with that, I will check all y'all later. And as always, keep wandering. Bah!